Hi everyone, this is Stephanie with Hightower Stitching, and I am back with my stuffed Hexie quilt today. And what I want to do is talk about the whole thing in this tutorial. So I'm ready to go. If you'll look, you'll see here's my Hexie, and it is a stuffed Hexie. And I used the same fabric on the back as on the front because I had it. And I thought, man, I've got a bunch of batting. I had one bucket full, one big bucket, and all of a sudden I had two buckets. And I said, okay, what can I do? When I had been messing with some hexagon shapes, and I had decided, what if, this is one of my what ifs, what if I took that fabric and I put that batting together and I cut them with a hexie template and sewed them together and then sewed them all together. And so I made flowers. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start and tell you what I did to get there. And one thing I want to tell you is several people that have looked at my sample, I try them out on family and friends, they couldn't let it go. Where I had started putting it in a quilt, they put it on their lap and they just said, and felt of the quilt and felt of it. And it was just so fluffy and nice. And it started out too because I wanted to make a gift for a gift for a friend, which was this will take a little bit of time. But this does require sewing on the sewing machine, and it does require hand stitching. And so you can have the best of both worlds. And here's the quilt that I've gotten done so far with my flowers. I've put my flowers together. And you're going to say, boy, that's pretty dark. Well, you know what? All the colors, a lot of the colors that you buy now are springy and light colored and have a different look. And when I first started quilting, I loved the rich, dark colors. If you saw any of my quilts from way back when, you'd see that they were done with those kind of colors. And so I have some in the box, and I said, I'm going to start with that and see what happens. And you can even probably tell just by looking at it that it's kind of fluffy. And then when I flip it over, I've sort of got it on the reverse. And there you can see my hand stitching where I sewed those together. Let's get you a little bit more here. And see how I went in, and I'm going into different colors. When I started out, I just started with one row, and I just added a flower, and I added a flower, and added a flower. Then I got to the second row, and I did okay. But when I got to the third row, I changed my strategy that I said, I'm going to make 3 or 4 flowers that would go in that row. Then I'm going to lay them down and audition them with the quilt. And that's really been helpful. And it also helps me to make sure that I sew the right part together. It's really funny. You say, there's nothing to this. Well, if you don't lay it and pin it a little bit where you're exactly going to start the direction you're going to go. I actually had to take out 2 petals of hand stitching. And I thought, I'm not going to do that again. Now I'm going to look at the material, and I'll tell you some things that I learned as I started. And this one happened to have a nice, enough to make my 6 petals. And I made this one for you. And you can see that I've used black. Well, I actually used a thin Sharpie because I was doing so much dark. But it's easy to see. Whatever you start with, whether it's an air erase marker or a Sharpie or a mechanical pencil, use that all the time. Use the same kind of marking. And then when you do it, cut carefully on your lines. This is not one where it's going to all sort of happen to fall together no matter what you cut. This one, you really need to stick to your lines because you're supposed to have 6 even sides. And then when you get done. So the next thing I did was I was going to turn it out. So I had to leave an opening on each one of the little hexies that started with. You say, why a 5-inch? I said I wanted to see something I could hold with my hand and really manipulate rather than going with a small one at this point. So these are ready to be cut, and I'd cut them carefully. Well, then I need the center. And so I grabbed a material, and you would either use a dark or a light, depending on what color your material is and how it goes together. Now, when I first started out, I had large pieces of batting, larger. I started with the larger ones that I had that were leftovers. And I would put that underneath this one. And then I would pin it, and I would pin it once. And then I would carefully cut through all of those. Well, then I got to some pieces that really didn't go across there, or they were smaller. So I would just cut these out. And then I had already pre-cut from my smaller pieces some pieces, but here again, and I didn't mark it this with a Sharpie or anything. I just held my Hexie on that small patch and carefully cut them out and put them in sets of 7 so I can go back to that. Well, then as they got smaller too, then I started looking at my strips that I had left, and I've had good luck with using the stitching back and forth. Gosh, I've gone brain dead. But the one that goes back and forth, and what I do is I make sure that I've got 2 edges that are close together, and they're sort of straight, and that makes it easier. And sometimes I trim them straight. So, and then I always make sure that I get the same sides. Like this is warm and natural, so I have a really nice cozy fuzzy side, and then a knit more tight side. So I make sure that the tight's on one side and the fuzzy's on the other. Zigzag stitch. I knew it'd come back to me. So I set my zigzag up, make sure that it catches it all the way down there, and it's not going anywhere. And that is a great use for that, especially with this 5-inch. All right. And yeah, I was going to show you right now too, because I went with darks, but the other person I was thinking about this for is a child. And so I want to show you some colors that I grabbed. And I just thought these are just kind of sassy. And this is going to be my center, this blue one, aqua. And then like here's the little baskets, and on that one. And then I had another one, girls love purple. I went to purple, and I've got a center, and then I've got the outside. But that's the only 2 I got so far, because I said I better finish the dark colored one first before I get going. So that gets you all the materials that you need: your fabric, your batting, and some kind of a marking utensil, and a template. And there are a lot of places on the internet to go get hexagons, that, you know, free patterns of hexagons, because you just need one, and you can cut it out of manila folders, and then use that to mark your fabric. Now what I want to do is share with you some tips about the sewing part. We are going to make this in one video. This is kind of sweet. All right, I have my 2 hexagons. They're face to face, and I have my batting on the back. And this one I've already sewn, and you can see my black stitching on there and where I've left my opening. Now I usually back stitch right where I start, and I want to show you a little bit about that. And you notice I didn't have to do any dots on the corners. I tried doing that, and my shapes weren't coming out the same. So on my sewing machine down here where the cover is for the bobbin, I have a little piece of blue that marks my 1/4 edge, and I use it all the time because I can see it so easily. Then I slid my piece in there, and I start where one of my opening sides are, and I make sure that I'm going to go down that 1/4. I'm going to start, and I'm going to go back a stitch, and I'm just going to go off, and then I don't cut. I just pick it up, pull it back gently, and then move it back so that I'm looking at my 1/4 inch. And I'm going to do that all the way around. Just stop, and you'd be amazed. The main thing is to don't get so that you're sort of doped there from it's so easy, dopey, then just follow it all the way around. And I got where I wasn't watching what I was doing, and I wasn't watching the 1/4 inch, but it didn't get off too bad. I tried doing some chain stitching from one to another, and I didn't like that at all. That just made me lose some good stuff on there of trying to get it to look exactly right. And then when I get back to my opening, then I back stitch it. And I also did set my machine, was on a 2.4. Well, I moved it down to 2.3 so it was tighter. Then the next thing that I did was I had these great corners, and I'm going to take and I'm going to cut in, and I'm going to cut up, and I'm going to cut that corner out, because when you get ready to turn this, you want it to turn nicely so that you've got the nice corner. So I'm going to quickly, carefully, but if you cut through your string where they crisscrossed, you're going to find out that your next thing that you use, which I'm going to use the end of a paintbrush. Okay. Now, where's my paintbrush? Here it is. All right. Now, here's the next part. And what I do is I just do stacks of something, and then that's what's fun about it. You can cut a while, you can sew a while, you can turn the things out, and then you can go and stitch your flower together. So it's really kind of a fun project. And what I found out is that if I put my little finger or the one next to it inside, and this one I actually made a little generous hole. Some of them are a lot smaller. Then I'm going to slide. I slide it up to about the opposite corner. And I've got this worked really good. This was the end of a paintbrush. You know, I do what I find. And I'm going to take and start this. And here it goes. And I'm going to get it back towards the corner, the opening that we have. All right, and now this part, I usually end up holding the paintbrush near my stomach and then pushing back down on it. But now you can see how easy that's coming down. And you get really good at this. All right, now what I got to do is I've got to get those corners out. And you don't want to overkill it, but just get it so it's out. And you see there's a nice corner. There's a nice corner. And when I get close to the opening, there's this corner. All right. And so far we've got that far. I'll go back in my opening, turn it since I'm right-handed, and then come over and get the other two. And it's kind of restful because you just turn them and then you finger press them. And you can start to see how close they are. And if you've got one that's off, you just go back in there and push it out. Now you're going to get to the opening. And it's a small opening. So I just usually just fold it in and look at it, make sure it's kind of straight. Now, you can go back there and slip stitch that with a needle, but I found that as I was sewing, I only had one time when I was hand stitching that I missed one of these little flaps on that opening right there, and that was easy to fix, but one out of all of them that I've done. So this one is done, and then you're ready to go on and open the next one. All right, now we're ready to do the hand stitching part. And this has really been fun. I started a long movie, and I just sat and sewed and sewed. I couldn't believe I'd got so far. But you can see the little stitches that show up in the back on this light one. And you can see how even they get after a time. Because what have I done? About 10 flowers, over 10. And I've just gotten a way of doing them and catching it. Now I'm using a sharp, strong needle, but not too fat, not too thick, but sort of a strong one. And then I'm using a double thread. I'm just using regular sewing thread. So I had started on, so I'm going to turn it back to the right side now. And for where I am right now, I have it pinned because I want to see where I'm going to make sure that I hit this close over here on this side. And I'm going to make sure that I start tight enough over in this side. But I can always go back and do a little stitching if I can see a hole there that I don't want to see. And this one, oh, that's funny, right where I'm starting. This is one where there was the opening. The opening's right here. And that makes it sort of a lot of fabric right there. And there's a little bit of batting in there too. But it hasn't been a problem. So I'm going to take and I'm going to slide my needle in through the hexie. And I'm going to pull it, the thread, till it pops. There it went. And sometimes you have to use your nail and rub it to get it to go. But now there's a nice strong in there. All right. And then I'm going to get it where I can see all 4 pieces because I've got that opening right there. And I'm going to do this through the camera. So you guys, you know what I'm saying. I'm going to catch the 4. So then I'm going to pull it through. It took me about 3 needles to find the one that I really liked to slide through there. And remember, if it doesn't want to slide, if you don't know the trick about rub it on your hair and then slide it, you might appreciate that. And then I'm going to go again. And I'm going to try and catch those. And it's not going to be that hard all the time. That's funny. That's where I was. And so I'm going to go down in there. And at first your stitches might be big, but you're going to be maybe learning how to do this or doing it for the first time. And when I was doing it for the first time, I just wanted to make sure that they caught. Now I got a little rhythm going in my needle. And then of course I had to lose my needle one time. I said, oh my gosh. Well, my husband taught me, go get the flashlight. And he was absolutely right. Then he would flash it on the floor, and you could not believe how many times we found the needle. Because it's like when I was quilting on the quilt rack, I end up with a needle that I just love, and I wanted to keep going. Now, and I'm going to go over here to the end. That's what I'm going to. And when I get over to the end, pretty much every time, I go ahead and finish it off because it just makes this stronger and stronger to have that like that. Then sometimes when you're doing the petals, you can run them and they'll run into the next part that you want to do. But just always turn it over and look. Make sure that your petal's going where you want to. And when I get towards this middle of that corner, I want to make sure that I get there. And you know, even if when you turn the quilt over, there are little bits of sunlight shining through there at these corners, it doesn't matter. You've got it sewn together so well. It's not a problem. And then what I do is I go back through there. See, it's getting hard. And I go back through there 2 or 3 times. All right, and then I'm going to take and finish it off. So I like to take and tie my knot, have it out there a little ways, and then I'm going to slide it between the pieces of fabric. And I've got something nice and strong. And I'll take and cut him off. And then, oh, this is always a fun part to me, turn it over. And I love looking at the front of it, and I say, oh man. And then sort of just touch it a little bit and get it like you want it. And the other thing that I did was, I don't think I'm repeating myself. I started out just adding pieces to the other flowers that I had. And then when I got down to the 3rd row, I said, this isn't going to work because I'm getting them in the wrong place. Isn't that funny? So easy. So I started making my flowers totally then, and that makes it a lot easier. Plus, then I can take and put them where I want to because I have my colors. And this, you can see how these are going together so good with the points that you've made. And I try not to put two openings on the same side that you do, where that little opening is for your finger to go in and help get your pieces out, because that really makes it thick. So now I know this is good. I'm going to fold this over. And I found that I really like, I'm right-handed, I'm going to take and start from my right hand, and I'm going to go towards this one. I never did really go that way because I knew that I wanted to catch these down here on the end. And when I see where I think it's needs to go, then I pin it. Because sometimes you do have a side that's wide. For some reason, I don't know what caused that. But if you just hold it, you can get it, and it will go into place as you're sewing. So when I get ready to start, I come way over here, usually go in a dark. Oh, I slid away from you. Oh, I was trying to get that. And I'm going to pull it, and I heard the knot catch. All right, and then I'm going to take it. I'm going to go right through there a couple of times to lock that end in place. Like I tell you, I don't want anything to fall apart. All right, now this is going to be fun. There's my 4 parts, but there's no opening in here. And so I just start and go in and catch 4 and start going. And it's when you're coming back that you make your stitch small. That's when you can see how small or even they are. Now, if you give this to a gift, to a person as a gift, I doubt they're going to be worrying about that. But it just gives you a goal to work towards, that you're going to make it, stitch it together well enough that it lasts and lasts. All right, and this is like going like through butter now because I don't have that little 1-inch opening, or less than an inch. I made them as small as I could because that makes it easier to get through there with that opening. And then tip it up and check that you're going through. Get back over here. I have to put an X on the table so I'm going to stay on top of it. See how neat that is? And how I'm going through 4. And I don't pull the thread real hard because that puts stress on it. And if somebody did grab it or something, it could always break. But you start getting a feeling for when you've got it. All right, and we've already done going to the end down there. And as I look around my notes, I see that I've used up a bunch of batting. I've used up some of my old fabric. I've used up some of my not old thread, because make sure your thread is strong that you're using. And I've had a good time, and I'm going to finish this big one with all my old colors in it, and then start on the one for the gift for the friend. This is Stephanie at Hightower Stitching. If you enjoyed this, please hit subscribe and like, and see that if you have your bell for notifications ringing. Somebody mentioned that to me the other day, that if you have your phone set up, that you would get notifications. But Sunday morning is when I have these come out, on Sunday. Thank you for watching. Anything I've forgotten will be in the description.